Trojan fans, welcome to another edition of the Peristyle Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Abraham, publisher of USCFootball.com, joined alongside my buddy, my pal, Connor Morrissette. You can call him Triple Double if you like. He's back from Galen Center. Trojans had a disappointing loss to the Bruins in the men's basketball. We don't talk a lot of basketball on the show, but just wanted to bring that up. He was there last night. How you doing, Connor?
Doing well. We can talk basketball for a second. I know it's a disappointing rivalry loss, but I think Eric Musselman's doing a really nice job in his first year with a new roster. Two of his impact players are out injured, and they're fighting every night. They're competitive in the Big Ten. Their home record leaves a little bit to be desired, but I was nervous after they got walloped over the Thanksgiving week in Palm Springs by St. Mary's and then had a not so very competitive game against New Mexico that things were going to be bad, but they've turned it around to be competitive in the Big Ten, and I think that's really all you can hope for in first year with a new coach after missing out on some star players in the transfer portal. They got Desmond Claude, but they really regret missing out on that Michigan big man, Danny Wolf, who torched them a couple weeks ago. So I think that staff's doing a nice job, and it's a frustrating loss, but they're certainly headed in the right direction.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, you know, like I said, we don't talk a lot of basketball here, but I think people around the program are pretty happy with Eric Musselman and what he's bringing to the table. And it's sort of any good success this year is kind of gravy. They're hoping to build after redoing the entire team, you know, to next year.
Yeah,
so
make the tournament next season and people will be happy.
Yeah. So fun show for you today. We got to talk about the big, the breaking news about USC finally getting a general manager. So we'll get to that in a little bit. If you have questions or comments, we do not have a lot of those this week. I put a call out on Twitter. You can follow either one of us out there on the Twitters or X or whatever you want to call it. We have a few questions from that. And if you are live in YouTube or Facebook, we should be live on both of those. You can put your questions in the chat while you're watching live, and we'll do our best to answer them along the way. So like I said, don't have a lot of emails and stuff this week. So get in the chats or tweet at us, and we will try to get to your questions there. For a future show, you can email us, podcast@uscfootball.com. That's the email address. It's been that way since 2008. We keep going on. But the same email, podcast@uscfootball.com. You can also call or text us. So leave us a voicemail or shoot us a text. 424-254-9141 is the number. And we do love getting rated. 5 stars are great. You can do it on Spotify. You can do it on Apple Podcasts. So please do that. That's a lot of fun for us. But you can also on Apple Podcasts leave us a review. We've been giving away Trader Joe's gift cards to the best reviews, but we don't have any new ones this week. So leave us a leave us a review, a 5-star review, and we'd love to read it on the air. And if it's good, we will send you a Trader Joe's gift card. Speaking of Trader Joe's, Connor, I did my little trip. I was on my vacation. I had to go to Trader Joe's and stock up, and then I bought something new that I hadn't purchased before. And here, I'll put up a picture. I made this salad. I know I normally do like sweets and stuff, but it's the Trader Joe's barbecue and black pepper Toscano chopped salad. And what I did, I made the salad, which is one of those prepackaged ones, which I love that. It's only like $3.50 or something. And I seared some tuna that I caught when I was down in Cabo last month with former USC All-American Jacob Rogers, but on his boat. But so I got some of the tuna. Salt and peppered it, seared it real quick in some oil, and cut it up and put it on the salad. It was awesome. I just had it for lunch, so I just ate this. So I took a picture. I thought we'd bring it on there, but so it's like a slaw base of the salad with kale. There's broccoli, red cabbage, carrots, and it had some toppings on it. There's cornbread croutons, so they're kind of crispy, and then the black pepper Toscano cheese is shredded. You put it in there too. So it's a really good salad, and it's only, like I said, it's only like $3.50 over at Trader Joe's, and I added the tuna on top, and it was really good.
That looks restaurant quality, Ryan. Bravo.
Thanks. I do my best, but yeah. So just in honor of Trader Joe's extending their agreement or partnership with Trader Joe's for another year, I thought I'd do a little picture of what I ate. So if you're listening on the podcast, sorry you couldn't see it, but it's kind of like looked pretty good. It tasted good too.
And the plating was nice too. Yeah, you did a nice job. That looks like something you'd get at a restaurant. That's for sure.
I tried to do that in there, but it was good. And that was about half the salad. So I what's it called? I
Portioned it out.
I portioned it out, so there was half the salad and then half the tuna, and that I seared, and so I have the rest in the fridge. So I might have that for dinner or something.
Wow. Okay.
It was a good little lunch. So Mark says, "Yuck! Sorry, I don't do fish." This is like sushi grade yellowfin tuna that I caught in Cabo. Like it's barely just sear it a little. But you just have the salad. The fish doesn't come with the salad. That was something I added.
You gave me some fish a year ago, and my friend who knows a lot more about cooking than I do prepped it, and we had some really delicious sushi. So
that's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's good. I got to go back down to Cabo. So yeah, if you get Warrior Cabo, look for them on Instagram. Jacob Rogers, former USC All-American. That's his company down there, and they do some amazing. If you like fishing. Amazing fishing trips down at Cabo. So it's funny. Yeah, it was great. I can't wait to go back down there and stuff. So
another vacation coming soon.
I gotta do it. My mom just called and was like, "Hey, one of her best friends. Her husband's Costa Rican, and they live there like half the year or whatever. So she's going down. She's like, you want to come down? I'm like, well, I'll look into it. I'll look into Costa Rica. Yeah. All right. So. What do we got to get to today, buddy? Was there anything else in the preamble? I think we're good.
No. Shout out Trader Joe's. You mentioned Chad Bowden. I'm sure we want to start there, right?
I do. USC got a general manager. If you looked on our YouTube channel, and like I said, we're live on YouTube, live on Facebook. So if you're live and you want to have a question, I'll star it and come back to it. I know we got a couple in the chat already, but if you follow our YouTube channel, then you could see what Connor and Shotgun did as their initial reaction to USC hiring away Chad Bowden from Notre Dame. He was the GM this last year, was with the program for 4 or 5 years or whatever, and really involved on the recruiting and evaluation side. This is a new position in college football, relatively new, very important, pretty unique skill set, and to get somebody that was a big part of building a roster that made a run to the national championship, to me, is a power move by Jen Cohen and Lincoln Riley and USC, the whole administration, to be able to put the resources together and make a run at someone that's had success in this role already and not projecting to have success in the role. I thought it was a really big deal, but I wanted to get your thoughts. I know if you guys watched the video, Connor and Shotgun gave their thoughts on it, but let's reiterate a little bit for the podcast, especially you get to marinate a little bit longer since the hire.
Well, just looking at some of the guys that he was able to bring in when he was recruiting coordinator, it's really impressive. It's a big group of guys that really helped Notre Dame make the national championship game. So when he was the director of recruiting at Notre Dame, 2022 class, 2023 class, 2024 class, and then he was the general manager this past year, so he helped sign the 2025 guys. But just looking at those couple classes, so in 2022, his first year doing it after working only on the defensive side in 2021, he helped get Benjamin Morrison to Notre Dame out of Arizona, and Morrison was decently ranked, but no one projected him to be an NFL first-round pick, and he's going to be that. So right away, that's a big feather in his cap. A few other impact guys were from that 2022 class as well. Jadarian Price, Junior Tui Halamaka, who's from out here, good edge rusher for Notre Dame. 2023, he lands Jeremiah Love, Christian Gray, Drake Bowen, Jaden Ostbury, Adon Schuler, guys who, if you watch the college football playoff, you heard their names nonstop on defense. Jaden Greathouse was a part of that 2023 class, Notre Dame's best receiver. Arguably, his best class was in 2024 when he lands Kingston Viliamu-Asa, Aeneas Williams, Bryce Young, 3 true freshmen who played a big role at Notre Dame this past season, and he killed it in the transfer portal with R.J. Obin, Jordan Clark, Bo Collins, Rod Hurd, and, of course, Riley Leonard from A&M. And then in 2025, we all remember the Madden Farimo drama. He ends up picking Notre Dame over USC. So as a recruiter, as an evaluator, how can you not like this hire? So it's a big step in the right direction for USC, and just mentioning some of the names that he had a hand in bringing to Notre Dame, that has to get you excited. I'm happy that USC is taking this step. They poached the general manager from their rivals. There's a lot to like about this hire, but I start with the evaluations, just naming some of those guys that he helped bring to Notre Dame. he's a big reason why that team was in the national title this past season.
Yeah, I think just on the organization side of things, it's a new era, and the way you handle building and retaining a roster has changed a lot. And to be honest, I don't think USC has adapted to that very well. I think in the beginning, a lot of people blamed resources and saying that they're not spending enough money. And then what we've seen over the last year and a half or so is the money has been there. How it's utilized has not. I think that's where it fell short. And a lot of fans still are saying, like, blame House Victory, blame the, and I think they're just past that, where they're going to spend the money. How do you spend it wisely? Like, they've gone out and got some big names. We've seen USC put a lot of resources behind some of these decisions, but you have to do it in, an effective, strategic way a lot of the times. And I think that's where USC has been lacking. And because a lot of those resources are coming from donors, and, yes, the athletic department is going to spend some money coming up with the revenue share, but still a lot of that comes from donors. If you're a donor that's giving a 7-figure, gift, you want to see some results. So if the team goes out and lays an egg and goes 6-6, you're like, what the heck did my money go towards? So the GM is also going to be part of, hey, not only did we're going to take this money, we have to spend it the right way and show results. And if you're the GM of Notre Dame, you can say, hey, we didn't sign every big name free agent out there, but we did it strategically. We brought in Riley Leonard, and then we recruited these guys, and we developed them and filled a missing piece here or there, and it was good enough to make a run at the national championship. And I think if he stayed at Notre Dame, that's something you can go back to your donors and say, here's the result. If you donate again, here, this is what we can do. And I think USC's been lacking that aspect, right? It's a huge role. And I think you would have loved to see this guy hired in November.
Or a couple years ago.
Yes. But, I mean, the next best time is now, and they have him now. And I think we're going to get into, I know there's some questions about, what the dividends he can bring to the team. But I think they needed this. You needed this outside voice that's done it, had success in this new world, and will be able to say to Jen Cohen, hey, you need this, or say to Lincoln Riley, hey, you got to do this, and know what he's talking about and have the results to back it up.
NIL has really been the driving force in these recruitments, I'd say, for the last 2 years. And so looking at what USC's done in the last 2 regular seasons at 13 and 11, just not good enough. So you hope that Chad Bowden can come in and help manage the roster better, because, Ryan, we've had a talk a million times on this show. USC financially, they're not Ohio State, they're not Texas, but they're in that sort of second tier financially. I think we can agree on that, but it doesn't feel like they have that 1B roster. And now you bring in a guy to oversee the roster. The hope is, with all the resources USC has, someone like this leading the charge can help bring the roster to that point. One question I have is, how much of an impact can Chad Bowden have on next season? Because they really don't have many other opportunities to add players outside of the spring transfer window. So I hope that they go out and they crush the spring window, and there aren't holes on the roster where we can say, I think this area on the team is what is preventing them from being competitive in the Big Ten, and why I don't think they can make the college football playoff. Go plug the holes with this new guy who you brought in. Try to be as competitive as possible next season. What I don't want to see is them not be as aggressive in the spring and then just kind of go with what they have. I still think they have some holes. They brought in someone to address the holes. There's one area left. There's one time period left to go and address the needs of the roster. Let's let this guy cook. Let's let this new general manager do what he does. Add some guys in the spring and give me no reason to pick them to, be around 500 again for next season. Get a linebacker, get some depth on the offensive line, get an edge rusher, get another receiver, get some secondary depth. They have some holes, and who knows what Jade Maiava is going to do next season. But if you can plug those holes, USC has a real chance. And now they have a guy who's capable of plugging the holes where I don't know if they necessarily did before.
Yeah, we'd love to see a major impact in that spring window. And, we don't know what's going to happen with the roster. Players leave spring football, during spring football, after, there might be some evaluations going on where he's like, we need this guy to walk, or we have to step up and retain this guy. So I think he can be involved in roster retention and pruning, if there's a better word, I don't know, for the roster, but also, of course, hitting the spring transfer window as hard as possible for the areas of need, looking at linebacker going like, hey, how have you not added more players here? And, reevaluating everything. I don't think you bring a general manager in not to be like, well, how have you been doing it? That's what we're going to keep doing. Like, how you've been doing it isn't working. And I think for years and years, decades, USC, when we were talking about athletic director hires and all that, they kept bringing in people that just kept doing things the way they've been. Like, they weren't bringing anyone that would do anything new. You're bringing a general manager to give a new perspective on things. And there's going to be some evaluations and a lot of, you want change to happen because it hasn't been working for you. Like, what was the record was it 13-11?
Yeah.
That's not good enough for 2 years of paying a head coach $11 million a year. Like, that's not, at USC especially, not good enough. So you want these new set of eyes, and I think it's going to. He could have a lot of impact, but the one that you're going to be most tangible one is going to be that spring window. But there might have been guys that were thinking about leaving, and then he, figures out a way to keep them to stay, or guys that you don't want on the roster anymore that have been more of a problem than anything. And I'm not saying that's the case, or I don't know anyone specific, but there might be some pruning to the roster. So I think he can have an impact on a lot. And he arrived this past week, so he's getting to work.
I heard 247 national analysts Andrew Irvins and Cooper Patagnan talking about the hire, and I thought Cooper made a really good point. Lincoln Riley, of course, had to sign off on this, and you want someone who's going to work really well with a head coach, obviously. I'm not breaking any ground saying that, and Cooper made the same point. But he also made the point where he feels like this is USC's athletic director, Jen Cohen, flexing her muscle a little bit, bringing in someone who isn't affiliated with Riley, someone who they're not attached at the hip, where if USC struggles again next season, Bowden can say, look, I just got here. This isn't my guy. This sort of seems like a good Jen Cohen hire in that sense. It's like the NFL model. This was the point Cooper made, where you have a head coach who the owner, of course, hires, but the owner maybe sometimes hires a general manager who isn't on the same page as the head coach, who doesn't have the head coach's best interest in mind. What I mean by that, they're not on the same team, like they're separate. So if the coach doesn't get the results, then the general manager can stick around. And we all know Lincoln Riley, his buyout is crazy, and he's not going anywhere. But this wasn't someone from his pool of people.
Yes.
And this is someone, to your point, Ryan, who can give a different perspective. And it seems like an NFL hire a little bit, where the owner's like, hey, I probably can't get rid of this coach. I don't like what's going on. Let's bring in someone else who can, at best, fix things, at worst put a little pressure on this guy to maybe do some things differently.
I agree, and I think this is I think Jen Cohen's really good at what she does. USC sort of they needed a real athletic director. They bring in Mike Bone. There were some problems there, but fix some stuff. There were some good things too. And then they bring in Jen Cohen, who's been a rock star, as due. We're going to get into just retaining Danton Lynn. We talked about that last week, but more things have come to light. You're like, wow, that was pretty impressive what you were able to do. I think she realizes that there's no question you have to make this a championship type of team. And a lot of times as the AD, your number one deal is hiring and firing coaches. And she has no option to make any moves at head coach with football. So what can you do outside of that? And I think getting another voice from outside the room was a big deal. And I was very curious to see. I didn't hear much about this hire. Like, we hear stuff about other things. This one took a while, but I think they did a good job keeping it quiet. I haven't heard anybody really even talk about his name as being an option. I don't know how long it took or whatever. Maybe we can ask the administration about this at some point. But that was it was really impressive to me how they pulled that together. And I think this is what having a great athletic director that's at least trying. I think for decades, USC had people that didn't know what they were doing. They never would have been able to hire a guy like Lincoln Riley. You could argue, the results of that, but retaining a great defensive coordinator that a national power once. Going and getting the general manager from the team that was in the national championship, like those were things way out of US. They're not even close to USC things that could have happened if Pat Hayden or Lynn Swan. They don't know what the hell they're doing. They wouldn't have been able to do that. You needed someone that's really good at their job that can make an evaluation and go, the only way we're going to win is if we do something like this, and making a big move. And I can't stress enough how big of a move something like that is, and how important it is to try to make this team successful. There's no guarantees, but man, it seems like that office is doing everything they can to try to make this program successful.
What's nice is there are no excuses for next season now too, when you poach the general manager of your arch rival, triple his salary for him to come to USC, retain D'Anton Lynn. Like, the defensive coaches, you have them. The front office and player personnel people, maybe some more hires are coming potentially, but you have the leader there now in Chad Bowden. Lincoln Riley, it's year 4 coming up for him. What excuse do you have remaining? I feel like it's kind of make it or break it next season. And again, he's not going to go anywhere with that buyout that he has in his contract. But what I'm trying to say is he said, look at the NIL when we got here and look where it is now. I'm talking about Riley. He's made some excuses for as to why they've underachieved. NIL going from nothing to a big deal has been part of it. And there have been other things, of course, that he hasn't talked about, like keeping Alex Grinch a year too long. If next season goes south and it's because of injuries, fine. But if next season goes south for any other reason, you have a really hard time making the case that he's the right guy for the job.
I agree with you there. Some people were in chat saying the audio might have been going in and out. I just kind of reset sorry if that made a little noise, but my microphone. But it seems okay on our end, so my apologies if there's something. The podcast version should be all good, so if you're listening there, you should be all right. Kevin in the chat says, Notre Dame had an $8 million NIL fund and made the national championship. Yes, like they spent a lot less than USC, a lot less than like a team like Oregon, and we're able to utilize it well. And I think, could you keep doing that? Like Ohio State spent a lot more, and it showed, but you can still have a really successful team. USC has better resources than that, and they just didn't manage it well, in my opinion. And now you bring in someone that's going to helpfully manage those resources well.
And make no mistake, having Marcus Freeman be the head of everything there is massive. Chad Bowden deserves a ton of credit for his evaluations and for what he was able to do to help build that roster, but it's not like he was the head coach. Marcus Freeman is the guy who made that all happen for the most part. So that's why this is fascinating. Like, let's see what they do in the spring window. Let's see how they recruit in 2026, who they land. Like, I want to see a different sort of strategy, and I think they're going to tilt towards going more local. But like, let's see, now that you have this brain trust and this rock star defensive staff in for another year, and they're going out on the road, Rob Ryan included, and they're really trying hard to show that they're recruiting these top guys. Like, there's clearly been a change in strategy from USC, from the general manager down to what they do on social media from a recruiting standpoint. Like, let's see the results now, because again, there really shouldn't be any excuses.
I agree with you. And we're going to get into the recruiting staff a little bit too, but I want to talk about D'Anton Lynn. I know we talked about it last week.
Yeah, what new info do you have?
Well, you mean on D'Anton Lynn?
Yeah, you said some new stuff came to light. Let's hear it. Are you talking about Jim Knowles?
I'm talking about the Jim Knowles stuff. Yeah, so nothing like breaking news or anything. Sorry.
You got me excited.
Oh, well, yeah, so it came out, Penn State tried to really go after D'Anton Lynn. D'Anton Lynn played football at Penn State. Penn State loses their defensive coordinator to Clemson, and they see what kind of a job he did. And USC stepped up. And like I said, I don't think previous administrations would have been able to keep him. I was really praising Jen Cohen for being able to pull this together with Lincoln Riley, the staff, and keep D'Anton Lynn there. I think it's a big deal for continuity. He's really good at his job. Give him a second year to see what he can do, how he can cook. Love it. It was more impressive seeing that Penn State then went out and got the national championship winning defensive coordinator from Ohio State and paid him a record $3.1 million a year, 3-year deal or whatever. It's like that. We've never seen a coordinator make more than $3 million. D'Anton Lynn, I think, is over 2 at USC. I don't think Penn State offered him that kind of money. I think it was a combination of they thought they could get him. James Franklin came to L.A. in-home visit, like a recruit kind of thing, and USC stepped up and was able to keep him. They don't want to miss twice, so when they're going after Knowles, they're going to spend a lot of money. And everyone at USC, from what I've heard, wanted to keep Lynn. So it wasn't like he had a beef with Lincoln Riley or Riley had a beef with him or Jen Cohen didn't like him or whatever it was. Like everyone was like, you got to keep D'Anton Lynn. Everyone felt the same way. I don't believe that was the case at Ohio State. There was definitely some ruffling of the feathers there. I don't know the details of the relationship. I talked to some Ohio State people. There was a report, I think, I forget who put it out there, but that there was talk if Knowles didn't sign his extension, he wouldn't be welcome at the national championship parade or something like that. That was really weird. Brett McMurphy, I think, put that out there. And there was, there's been a lot of sort of like, they had the number one defense in the country. They won the national championship, but there were some issues there with that relationship, Ryan Day, whatever it was. So I think that's a factor where Ohio State wasn't going to be like, they wanted to keep him, but they weren't going to be like all in to keep him like USC was. So they weren't going to match a massive offer like that. So it's a huge deal that Penn State goes out and takes Ohio State's defensive coordinator when USC didn't let him. So I think it makes it even more impressive that USC kept D'Anton Lynn after seeing what Penn State did to Ohio State's defensive coordinator.
Ohio State choosing to not match a huge offer kind of sounds like what happened with Chad Bowden too, where Notre Dame wasn't going to come close to matching the offer he got at USC. I'm totally with you though, Ryan. If USC loses D'Anton Lynn, like that's a huge loss and that stinks, but like to keep him and then Penn State goes and gets Jim Knowles, like nothing against D'Anton Lynn. I feel like I'd probably rather have Jim Knowles as my defensive coordinator and like it's 1A, 1B. They're both awesome, but like to get, he's probably the best guy you possibly could have gotten. So that D'Anton Lynn was in the conversation with him just goes to show how valued he is. And Penn State wanted Lynn more. So maybe I'm mistaken to say that Knowles is better than Lynn, but I hope you get what I'm trying to say, where like he's in the upper echelon of coordinators and you were able to keep him. And then what does the team who wanted him turn around and do? They get probably the best case scenario for them that they possibly could do. So we talk a lot about optics and how USC's been on the wrong end optically with some stuff, but on this one, they killed it, and bringing him back was huge. And I don't know exactly who deserves the most credit. I'm sure Jen Cohen deserves it a lot. I'm sure Riley deserves it a lot too, so credit to both of them. But retaining Lynn, that was the biggest thing they could do this offseason if he was threatening to leave, and they got that done, so that's huge.
It definitely was. And, if you remember, Jim Knowles killed it at Oklahoma State, and that's when Ohio State hired him away. They had the number one defense in the country, so it made sense. Kevin says, Jim Knowles butted head with Larry Johnson and other staffers, allegedly. Yeah, there was some talk about them wanting to change the defense or something like that. And actually on the podcast of Champions this morning, it sort of reminded me of like the Pete Carroll, Norm Chow relationship, where there was some strain there, even though they're both, having a lot of success. That's one of those things where you just try to make it work. Like, man, you got the number one defense. And yes, their talent was ridiculous, but he's been very, very good at what's going on. It's kind of one of those things that you just got to let a guy like that cook. And I don't know all the dynamics of the relationship, but he's moving on to Penn State. So big moves in the Big Ten. And I think Ohio State will be fine, obviously. They got so much talent. They'll hire somebody really good. But yeah, it's just more impressive to me that Jen Cohen was able to keep him, knowing how badly Penn State wanted somebody to come in there.
Mm-hmm. So. And I wonder, too, we probably won't get too good of insight into it talking to Lynn. I don't know if you have a relationship with his agent. I don't. But how much did Lynn want to stay, too? Like, I do think he was close if USC wasn't able to match the money or at least get close with the money to leave. Were there other factors, too, where it wasn't just a money thing and Lynn really did want to stay at USC? How much of it is on Lynn for him coming back? Riley deserves credit. Jen Cohen deserves credit, of course. But at the end of the day, maybe Lynn was just like, too, hey, I got a pretty good situation here. I want to stick around.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about that, too, because we talked about it last week, retention-wise. If Lynn was gone, we're not sure what was going to happen to that all-star defensive staff. They end up bringing in Rob Ryan, and I'd said I'd been told he wasn't going to be like an on the road recruiter type guy, but he's out on the road right now recruiting. So at least he's doing it for a little bit. I'll find out. Maybe that's been updated. Maybe he changed his mind. And he wants to go on the road. I'm not sure. We'll try to find out what's going on there. But getting a guy like that I know Danton Lynn was really high on helps with the retention too. I think they're giving him what he needs to succeed, and that's a big part of it too. But there's a picture, them out on the road recruiting, the whole staff or most of the staff out there. So, but yeah, I was a little surprised to see him out on the road recruiting.
Yeah, I was too, and I'm looking to get some answers on that too because we had heard that he wasn't going to be on the road. So maybe USC heard that and there was pushback, and they didn't like it optically. I don't know. I don't know what happened. So, or maybe we just got bad info. That happens sometimes. But I mean, it's too bad when you hear it straight from the horse's mouth. So just one of those things. We'll get some clarity on it because I know people on our board were like, "Hey, what happened? I thought he wasn't going to recruit." So
yeah, I'll try to find out what's going on there. And it's a different, as far as recruiting goes. Like I think he can be, he's an older guy, but he can, he has Super Bowl rings. Like there's things that he has some cachet out there. But I think he'd be great, just when recruits come to campus and being able to talk to them and stuff. But if you have like a younger, energetic guy that's going to hit so many places on the road, and I think that's the way staffs are compiled now. Like they're just doing things. You're recruiting it a little bit differently. Before it was like, hey, here's your 10 assistant coaches. They're the only ones that can go on the road, and they've expanded it now, so you can actually have guys that are specializing in recruiting and not just coaching, but they move those around too. So I'm not sure the exact rules of putting guys like on and on the travel list and how often you could do it. Oops, if you're watching live, I've been talking. It was a picture of Connor only. I forgot to switch it back. Sorry. But yeah, we'll get some clarification.
Well, I actually looked into this. So it's 11 coaches can go on the road, but they don't have to be one of the full-time assistants. So you have the 10 full-time assistants and then the head coach. So that makes up the 11 who it's likely that those guys go on the road. But we saw Bryson Allen Williams going on the road, even though he wasn't a full-time guy before Rob Ryan came on. So say down the line, if maybe there was some truth to what you heard in Rob Ryan, he's recruiting maybe for January and February, and I don't know how much they can recruit in February, but just let's say the calendar allows that. There's a world where if he were to stop after February, where Bryson Allen Williams could come and recruit for him and be one of the 11 if Rob Ryan leaves. So I'm trying to get some more information on that too, how much Rob Ryan will be on the road. Will it be full-time? Will he switch with Bryson Allen Williams? Can you switch if Rob Ryan stops? Does that mean for the rest of the year it has to be Coach Boss? So we'll get some info on that, and maybe in the War Room Friday we can pass that along.
Yeah. Joey in the chat says, is Bowden on campus yet? Yeah.
Yes.
So he got there Monday, I believe. So kicked things yesterday, right? I think it was. The days are all kind of mixing up right now, but yeah, he arrived this week.
One last Bowden question I have for you, Ryan. So we all thought it was going to be an NFL name, the later it went, and we sort of talked about how this would have been a good hire 2 years ago, and it still could be a home run hire. I'm not trying to say it's not that. Were you expecting someone more on the cutting edge, maybe with front office experience in the NFL, someone who has a lot more experience working with agents, working with contracts, someone more in that mold than a guy who has a recruiting background? Because that's sort of what I expected the longer it went on. And again, I'm not saying it's a bad hire. I'm just wondering, is this USC being a little bit of a step behind? And it could work out for him. Like, I thought they might try to not only set the market financially, but like go get someone who has front office experience in the NFL and change how this role is looked at, not only in college football, but in like the whole world of football, and really go after a true GM.
Yeah, I'm curious to see. I mean, I wasn't sure, but I felt like if you went on the NFL side, you might be lacking some of the critical parts of the whole evaluation thing, which is and when you're weighing it all, like, yes, the money is important, but I think what it came down to, and this is just sort of my guess, is that USC they've been overpaying for guys. They've not been utilizing their resources as well as they should, but they do have a lot of resources. Yeah. So if you can fix the evaluation, that side of things, or part of the recruiting and all of that, then you could probably get the guys into some pretty good deals. And maybe you're not the shrewdest contract negotiator, but you're getting the right people, and you're not, if you overpay for somebody, it's the right guy, as opposed to you're overpaying for someone and that you missed the evaluation too. I feel like USC felt like they needed more help on that side of it. And so to get someone that's been doing the job already and has had success doing it, I get it, you know. Now, he didn't have as big of contracts to deal with at Notre Dame. They didn't have as much NIL money. And obviously nobody's done it with revenue share yet, because that hasn't started. So that could be, you know, a potential issue that if you're, you know, now that all this extra money's coming in that they're going to be using through revenue share. But I feel like they needed to fix some stuff as far as evaluating and recruiting and building that, you know, building that side of things. They just were lacking there. So getting someone with experience that's done the GM role, and you know, I'm sure he's learned about contracts at least in that first year, right? Because that's part of your duties. I get it. I kind of get why you went that direction as opposed to NFL side, where you know you can deal with agents, contracts, all that stuff, but evaluating high school players, like that's going to be, you know, I think that's probably the tougher part of the job.
Great point. You're right. Those guys aren't evaluating people who are 14 to 16 years old. They're evaluating guys who have all this college tape, and it is totally different. So yeah, there's sort of some give and take with that, and we'll see. Time will tell if this is a home run and USC knocks it out of the park. They start recruiting top 10 nationally, maybe even top 5, with Bowden leading the charge, and his background as a recruiter first and foremost ends up being a huge driving force in their success. Then that will be great for USC, of course. And then when we look back on this hire, we'll say, yeah, they really went with the right direction, bringing him in. And now we have to see what happens, because one thing I want to caution people on, remember when Lynn was hired and they hired this all-star defensive staff, it was like, you fix the defense, you'll fix USC. They fixed the defense, and they didn't fix USC. You bring in the general manager, you fix recruiting. We got to see it play out before I can say, oh, everything's good. We'll be fine. So now the fun part begins. Let's see what they do.
Yeah, this is the direction you had to go in, though. This is what you needed this desperately to. If you want to be fixed, this is part of it. So it's good. You're fixing the issues. You fixed defense last year. Maybe you fix the roster creation and retention this year, and then see what happens. You want the offense to stay at that high level, and it just hasn't been there. Jeff said, I don't think an NFL GM would cut it. Different dynamics at play in college with kids not being held to contracts they signed. Yeah, I mean, it's a different deal, but you're hoping that changes too. But yeah,
that is a good point. I mean, we see a kid sign with Wisconsin and then not even enter the portal and go to Miami. If you were front office executive in the NFL and you see stuff like that,
you'd be pulling your hair out.
Yeah. If what I negotiate isn't enforceable, then what's the point of having me there? So I understand that point. It's a good point.
AZ Weirdo, or we do, says, you don't believe in this program, clearly, Connor. I mean,
not after the past 2 years.
I mean, 13-11. Like, if you're gonna be questioning anyone being skeptical of anything, like, look at the results. Like, yes, I think you're making the right moves. You're doing things to get going in the right direction. It's a shame that USC wasn't in that direction before, but if you can't be skeptical after a 13-11 2-year stretch, like, I don't know when you could be. But real quick,
I need to see Lincoln Riley take a jump too, because he's the guy. You know, it's him. Like that before. I'd say for sure, like, okay, I believe in the program. Like in the NIL era, like Lincoln Riley, all of his success was before the NIL era. Now the NIL era started. The last 2 seasons, they haven't been very good. That's the common denominator. I need to see him do well with this new landscape of college football, and there have been some signs of progress for sure. But until the results are on the field, and until they plug all the holes on their roster, like, you got to go get a linebacker. Hopefully they'll do that. Then I'll start to feel a little bit better about it. And I think it's totally fair to not totally
100%.
Believe in them right now.
100%. And that's the common, and what the administration is trying to do is fix everything around the head coach, because you can't, under normal circumstances, Lincoln Riley would have probably been fired, you know, and you can't because of his contract. So you're fixing all the other things, but a lot of this comes at the feet of Lincoln Riley. He's got to be able to do better too. Real quick, Pete Carroll is back. So he's still going to teach that
the
class at USC
Yeah,
for some
sure.
reason. I mean, that hasn't that worked for who's that? The basketball guy that coaches Grambling or something? Not Grambling. Green Bay or who's
Doug Gottlieb
Doug
does
Gottlieb.
his radio
Yeah,
show.
like
and
he still
doesn't
does his
even
radio
live in
show
Gre-
and the
yeah.
head coach. And
Yeah.
and he's awful at it.
That's a joke.
But that's like,
This
several
is totally
hours every
different.
day. Yeah, this is different. But he's the head coach, the oldest head coach ever in the NFL.
I thought he sounded good. Professor.
with the Raiders. Pretty cool. So all those people wanting Pete Carroll to be the GM. Sorry, but yeah, just congrats to Pete Carroll. I mean, he's you grew up a New England fan. You've seen him there. I remember when USC first hired him. My dad was a Patriots fan. Back in New England, and he was just like, he's got college energy, and he does. He has tons of energy. So he's an old guy, but he's still gonna be throwing, interception drills at a DBs, I'm sure. So it'll be interesting to kind of, follow what his career path is, especially the division with the coaches that they have in there. Like, it's great. Like, the coaches in that division are ridiculous.
Has to be the best grouping of coaches in a division of all time, I imagine, right?
Sean Payton, Super Bowl, right?
All of them, well, except for Harbaugh, but Harbaugh, national championship.
Yeah. So Peyton, Super Bowl, Andy Reid, multiple Super Bowls, Pete Carroll,
Both.
national championship and Super Bowl, and then Jim Harbaugh
Made a Super Bowl.
And won a national championship.
Yeah, all guys where you'd say those are damn good coaches. And Pete Carroll said the last time he took a year off of coaching was between the Patriots and USC, and he said the rest was history. So he's hoping that history repeats itself. I will say that AFC, especially that division going up against Mahomes twice a year, we've seen in the division the Broncos have some success, like against the Chiefs, but man, I would not want to be in the AFC right now if I was coaching. The NFC seems like the much easier path because you don't have to go through the Chiefs, obviously, but then Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, some other really talented quarterbacks. Not going to be easy in that division, that's for sure.
Spider-Man's a big fan of this. He's been in the chat. Like, he's pretty much every other comment is his, talking about Pete Carroll and the Raiders and stuff. So he's very...
Well, we know there's a lot of USC Las Vegas Raiders crossover, so I'm sure a lot of Raiders fans are happy.
All right. So let's see. We had another person that was having some audio issues. I don't know. Maybe refresh most people said it was sounding good. So let me know if there's any other problems with the audio, but it seems like we're doing okay with all that. Okay. Why don't we do this? Let's take a break. We have some questions in the chat. If you're live in our chats, we'll get to those questions. But I want to talk about, when we come back, I want to talk about your story, Connor, that you put out about it's basically like a where are they now, like the guys that transferred out, how they did. We're not going to go through every guy because there's 26 dudes, but we'll get some high level stuff from there and get some thoughts. So we'll be back in a minute, everyone. All righty, we're back here on the Peristyle Podcast. Thanks again for being with us. If you're live on YouTube or Facebook or listening across the podcasting world, wherever you get your podcast, you can get the Peristyle Podcast. Been doing this since 2008, people, a long time. Coming up on 20 years of the podcast. Whoa, yeah, it's been a minute. A lot of shows. I don't know how many. We're probably getting close to 2,000 now. I haven't looked. A lot of shows. Yeah, we had Matt Leinart on for our 1,000th episode, so we'll have to get someone. We'll get like Marcus Allen or something for the 2,000th episode. I don't know. We'll see.
Is Jen Cohen going to join us this offseason like she did last year?
Oh, we should. Yeah, we'll get her on. She's done a lot. She's been busy.
Yeah.
I don't think we can ask her about, hey, you want to fire Lincoln Riley or anything, but just all the stuff she's done to like try to fix this program as president. But good to hear from her and stuff. So
let's get her on. Let's get Colin Cowherd on.
Get Cowherd back. Yeah. That'd be good. Get his thoughts on things. He still keeps up with all this stuff. So, but I want to talk about some of the transfers. So Connor did a story up USCfootball.com, how USC football's 26 outgoing transfers fared at new schools in 2024. And I have a picture of like Damani Jackson wearing Alabama He had good success, right?
Depends who you ask. He played a lot. He was sort of up and down, though. There's a reason he's not going to the draft. He needs to play more.
Okay. But, how would you say in general?
Oh, in general, they really
terrible.
Didn't miss too many people.
Okay. So, I think Devontae Jackson probably could have helped.
Yeah, but, they had solid cornerback play.
Yeah.
Sierra Wright could have helped potentially. But, no, I look at three guys. Romello Height could have helped him as an edge rusher. Isaiah Rakes could have helped them in the middle of their defense, and it's tough to really get too mad at that situation when he doesn't even play a down at USC. And then Mario Williams, I know the fan base has sort of a love-hate relationship with him, but he led the American Conference in receiving. He's going to be an NFL draft pick. He had a good year at Tulane. He definitely could have helped because Zachariah Branch, as we know, didn't have that good of a year as a receiver. If you replace Mario Williams for Branch, I don't know how many more wins you have, but I don't know if Branch goes to Tulane, he has 1,000 yards like Mario Williams did. Mario had a really good year.
Yeah, even like a Dorian Singer, had so much success at Arizona, and then Utah was just garbage this year, right? So that wasn't much there, but
he was their leading receiver. I think he had 700 yards. They just didn't get any good quarterback play.
Yeah, so he probably could have helped some stuff too, but that just never worked, And maybe that was a Caleb Williams thing with him. I'm not sure. But in general, you got 26 dudes leaving the program, and you're trying to find a few that are okay, that guy could have helped. It just didn't seem like it was that big of a loss from the guys that were gone.
No, absolutely. And when we do this exercise a year from now, we might see some different results. That will be interesting when it's Zachariah Branch, Zion Branch, Quentin Joyner, Deuce Robinson. Let's see what those guys do with their next stops. But as history has shown, USC really hasn't missed the guys who have left, so maybe that'll change. But through however many years it's been here, 3, they really haven't missed anyone.
Yeah, it's kind of weird how that works. Now this year, probably an Emmanuel Pregnon.
Oh, I forgot about him. Yeah, they'll definitely miss him.
He's probably someone that's going to just crush it at the who's going to Oregon, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a blow. We'll see what the other ones Zachariah Branch was kind of disappointing. I thought there was a lot of potential with Zion Branch. We'll see what you're able to get out of him. But sometimes you lose a guy, the Malachi Nelsons of the world, he goes to Boise State and can't start there. You're like, okay, that's there's some questions about that. And we'll see some of the guys that left USC if they're going to have a lot more success. You wish them, a bunch of kids we've known for a while, and you wish them all the success in the world, but it's always, changing venues doesn't always change the results. So we'll see.
Yeah, and it's important to see how they replace the players who left. So Quentin Joyner leaves. He was set up to be the starting running back, and then USC signs Wayman Jordan, the junior college running back, who I think Gerard is the highest on him out of any transfers. So that looks like a big addition for USC. And Eli Sanders from New Mexico, 1,000-yard rusher at the group of 5 level. 2 really good running backs in their own right come in. So even if Joyner has a great season, you're not too disappointed losing him unless he's a Heisman finalist, because you brought in 2 running backs who look more than capable of replacing him. The one guy I've talked a lot about it. I know he wasn't that solid. He was sort of up and down, but Deuce Robinson to me still seems like there's a lot to unlock with him.
Yeah.
And if he was the 3rd receiver next season, I'd feel really good about that. But again, it's your 3rd receiver. It's not like they lost Jacoby Lane or Mekhi Lemon, and you're like, oh, man, those guys were definitely going to be huge next season. So you can certainly overcome the loss of Deuce Robinson, but if he goes off for Florida State next season, that wouldn't surprise me at all. I think he has the chance to be really special, and losing him was disappointing.
For sure. I think, any 5-star you lose, there's going to be a lot of talk. Hey, man, what happened? Was it on your end? Is it their end? Is it a combination? And sometimes you just need a change of venue, change of scenery, and it helps. And other times it just isn't going to work out. Corey Foreman was sort of meh at Fresno. He did a little.
Yeah, he didn't really do a whole lot. I can pull up his
That's all right. I was just curious.
Numbers right here. Yeah, so he played in 12 games, but only started 1, made 24 tackles, 3 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. So when he got in, he was good, but again, he's a reserve for a group of 5 school where he's someone like I will always feel bad for because he was a 5-star, like number one player in the country a couple years before those guys started making a lot of money. So if he was just a little bit younger and had that 5-star potential, obviously it's too bad he hasn't realized it yet. But like now those guys are making bank before they do anything. And he unfortunately was part of the last group that needed to prove themselves to get paid. And for whatever reason, he struggled to do that.
We had a couple of questions from Twitter I want to read to you. Serb says, do we expect USC to finish with a top 5 class for 2026?
I was thinking about that on my ride in. Ideally, yes, but that would mean that USC would need to beat Texas, Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and then whatever the hot other team is at the time. Maybe it's Texas A&M, maybe Michigan gets in the mix, maybe it's
Any
Auburn,
of those SEC teams, yeah.
LSU. Like, there's a lot of competition for top 5. So with Lincoln Riley at the helm and just how he's recruited, I don't see a top 5 class in the near future, but top 10 is certainly attainable, and that's where USC should be striving for. I don't rule out a top 5 class, but I have a hard time believing that they're going to do better than the majority of those teams I mentioned.
Johnny, USC Johnny on Twitter says, what notable recruits did Chad Bowden have to do with at Notre Dame?
We sort of went over that to start the show, but I am fixated on Benjamin Morrison, who wasn't that highly ranked as a prospect out of Arizona. He was a 2022 class guy for Notre Dame, and now he's going to be a first-round pick. He was hurt this season, so that was too bad that he wasn't able to play in the college football playoff. But yeah, he was the number 311 player in the 247 Sports composite. He signed with Notre Dame in the 2022 class when Bowden was the director of recruiting for Notre Dame. Before that, Bowden was the director of defensive recruiting, so he'd been involved in that Morrison recruitment. You'd have to imagine as a defensive player, and that evaluation was great because he's now going to be a first-round pick. So he's sort of the gold standard.
Coach Domingo 10 on Twitter, where will Bowden make the biggest difference on the team?
Well, I'll say it'll be in a couple years, but if he does what he was brought in to do, then USC will have a roster that matches Penn State. Let's start there, where maybe you have the home wrecker and Abdul Carter, who you give a lot of NIL money to, but then the rest of the roster is sprinkled with just really talented guys and, of course, others who have high potential. But it's not like Penn State every year gets the top of the line recruits and they're just pumping out the first-round draft pick year after year. They get some elite guys, and then the rest of it they sort of fill in with talented guys, but not top 10 prospects consistently. USC, I think, can use that model to go forward, and if their roster mimics what Penn State had this past season, then I think USC will be in a good spot.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of aspects that he's going to help with, but I think really I think they've made some changes, like in philosophy, as far as what they're going to do. I mean, bringing in like a Chad Savage to come in and relentless Southern California recruiter, pairing that with a guy, another Chad Bowden, to get to that. USC should be recruiting top 5 classes. Like they should be in the top 5, and there haven't been. And the recruiting landscape has changed. So I think allowing USC to get back to that with the player evaluations and being part of that, recruiting staff to point the guys in the right direction of where you need to be utilizing the resources to help out the coaching staff. Like, you really need to get on this guy and whatever it is. I think that's going to be a huge part of it because at the end of the day, you want to get these free agents and bring people in. But I think USC, when they were really the core of this program being that it's this NFL factory and a beautiful location in Southern California, like, you're close to all this talent. You got to get back to dominating, recruiting the best talent in Southern California. And if you can be a part of, hey, we've got resources to sort of fight off Oregon for a lot of these guys, but we're also going to be relentless recruiters for them and show that we can develop them and send them off to the NFL. I think that's a major part of what they're going to do to get back to where USC used to be. I think recruiting the best players in Southern California has to be a big part of it.
How about just getting the most bang for your buck?
Yes.
Where Oregon, they're going to be able to pay more than you for some guys, and sometimes you'll just have to put your hands up and say, hey, we can't compete with that. But that's not to say USC is, what does George say, they're the sisters of the poor or anything. They're nowhere near that, and they can compete with the vast majority of the top programs nationally. So get the most bang for your buck, because what's the biggest issue right now? They have a roster that gets paid a lot of money, but does it look like a roster that stacks up to the elite in the sport? Right now, no.
No. Let's go to some questions from the chat. This is from Jorge. Yeah, we got an outsider looking in. What does Chad think we have to change as an approach to recruiting? I guess along the same lines.
Recruit local, and I bet he'll want to change some of the contract stuff with House of Victory.
I bet you, yeah. That's a good point.
I think some of those contracts, like why does Emmanuel Pregnon leave? My guess is, obviously he was able to make more at Oregon, but I think at Oregon they have an easier time like just paying guys, where at USC you have to jump through some hoops, which shouldn't be a problem. You should have to do what the contract says to get paid, but if other schools aren't doing that, then you're behind just because that's the way things are. So I wouldn't be surprised if he tweaked the contracts too.
Let's go to Jeff. Does USC poaching Bowden from Notre Dame help reignite the need to keep the rivalry game alive past 2026?
God, I hope so, but I feel like in order for it to stay reignited, or I guess stay ignited, it would have to be Notre Dame poaching someone from USC, because if USC doesn't want this game anymore, they're fine. Notre Dame needs it more than USC does. We talked about this on the last show. I get why Lincoln Riley has talked about potentially getting rid of it, and he answers that one honestly, where he says, we'll look at it if it's really what's in the best interest for our program. And I mean, is it in the best interest of the program? Probably not, but that stinks. Like, you want to play the best teams. This rivalry is awesome. Like, I get why he would say that, but as a competitor, you would hope that he would just keep it on the schedule. So that's disappointing to hear, but I don't think this move has any effect on the rivalry. I hope it continues, but Lincoln Riley really hasn't given me too much confidence to believe that it will. But Jen Cohen, I think, made a statement, and she made it sound like they might want to keep it around. But, hey, actions speak louder than words. I don't think Riley loves playing Notre Dame every year, so we'll see what happens in a couple of years. It wouldn't shock me if they got rid of it or it turned into every other year, which is disappointing, but that just might be the new reality.
Yeah. Let's go to SoCal Weddings. We have SoCal Weddings listening. When will the new facilities be completed?
Summer 2026.
Yeah, it's like a big sign outside of the field, the practice field. So Howard Jones says summer of 2026. When we were there this past fall, the Brian Kennedy Field essentially got shut down, right? And then they had another field next to. I think I have a picture if you're live on YouTube. Yeah, you could. Well, this is an older rendering, but they were actually playing on this other field, and then now there's construction going on in that where Brian Kennedy was. So they're erecting.
On the left.
Yeah, so on the left side, they're erecting what this new facility will be. So the fields will stay intact, and I think baseball's still displaced, right, for another year or something.
I think they can practice on that field, but they can't play games.
Okay.
I believe. The tough thing about the new facility for us is we'll no longer be able to see all the guys walk out for practice, which is very helpful to report on injury stuff and who was out there, who wasn't. We'll have to now in the future, when we're let in, hopefully for practice, if they get back to that,
if that still happens,
we'll have to bring a roster and frantically check off everyone's name we see out on the practice field stretching, because before, right now, they walk across the street and we can see the guys come out of the tunnel, and it just makes our lives a lot easier. So that is something that will be that we'll have to watch for.
Yeah, they don't. They won't.
I think we have some breaking news, Ryan.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. Is this on Twitter?
As first reported in the War Room, USC was looking to add a cornerbacks coach, not a full-time assistant, but someone to help with the cornerback. So if you subscribe to our site, you would know that was coming. And they named it a man named Trovon Reed, and he was most recently the cornerbacks coach at UCF. He was just now named the new cornerbacks coach for USC.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Very cool. Yeah, I did not see that. So that was that. Did you see that on Twitter, or was that an email that just came out or something?
Email who just came out.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, there we go. Yeah, I haven't seen it on that. Trovon Reed, USC football quarterbacks coach. Okay. Riley says he's another fantastic addition to our staff, a rising star in our business. He is a talented coach with NFL playing experience. He's an exceptional recruiter who will surely contribute to our climb as a program. We're excited to welcome him to USC. So it could be something like that where he's going to be one of the on-the-road recruiters, but until he got there, Rob Ryan was. Well, I'm sure this will settle itself out, but it sounds like he's going to be one of the guys that's going to be out on the road recruiting and stuff. So, USC gets a new coach. It's so weird now because you're used to just being like the 10 assistant coaches, but there's other coaches that can, do other things too, be recruiters, help with, coach on the field and meetings, all that kind of stuff. So, all right, USC got a new cornerbacks coach. Joey says, suck at UCF. Hello. Yeah. Okay. And Jeff says, UCF makes an unsolicited offer to Riley, so we poach their cornerbacks coach. That's a pretty good point. Okay. Let's. We got a couple more, and we'll get out of here. We have Andrew, and he shot Chad Bowden tries to flip Madden Ferriamo to SC now that he's on the other side.
Maybe, but let's see what Ferriamo does in his first spring camp, in his first fall camp, probably in his first season. I don't anticipate him changing his mind that quickly. Now, if he gets phased out of the linebacker rotation after a year or two and he's looking for a new home, maybe Bowden being at USC helps, but I don't think anything's going to happen quickly.
Yeah. It could. We've seen guys sign places and never play it down there. We just talked about Isaiah Rakes. That happens, but it seems a little unlikely, but we'll see. Okay. And we have one here. How will the 2028 Olympics affect the USC football program?
That's a question for you. I don't know.
I'm not sure either. We had one other question. I think I accidentally deleted it. Yeah, I think that's changed a little bit, like some of the plans of what's going on. I don't think it's all they know exactly what's going to go on, but the way they were going to use the Coliseum before, I think is different, like the initial plan than what they've done, what they plan to do now. But I'll try to get some more information on that, but I'm not really worried about 2028 right now. There's like a lot of other pressing issues kind of going on. There was one other question. Let me try to find it. I'm sorry if I missed it, but anything else, Connor? What you got?
No, I'm surprised that this cornerbacks coach thing happened so fast. So I had heard 2 Sundays ago that this was in the works, and USC was looking at someone from Oregon. They were looking at someone from Nevada, and it turns out that Reed from UCF, Trovon Reed, he was the guy. So excited to meet him. I do wonder, Ryan, when they do the media day, where it's all the coaches and most of the players before the season starts, will this new cornerbacks coach talk? Taylor Mays never talked. Chad Bowden, will he talk? Dave Emmerich didn't talk. Like, these now are 2 pretty big figures in the football program. I hope we have a chance to talk to them.
Yeah. No, I agree with you there. We had Andrew in the chat. Thoughts on Denton Lynn continuing growth at SC, especially in the wake of the Jim Knowles news?
Sorry, I'm doing a couple things.
No, that's
Thoughts
okay.
on Lynn continuing growth at USC. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, I think you're happy with the way Denton Lynn took control of the defense, made things a lot better. He doesn't have as much experience as a Jim Knowles for sure. And like we talked about at the top of the show or earlier on the show, Knowles is a much more established defensive coordinator than Lynn is, but I think you have to be happy that USC, one, stepped up to keep him, and the direction that the defense is going with him. You give him some better players to work with, and I think there's a lot of optimism about USC and the defense. And I don't think the Knowles news has much to do with anything except showing how, it was a big deal that USC ended up keeping him. The fact that he could have went to his alma mater and USC convinced him not to. However, they wanted to do it, and they were able to poach away a national championship winning defensive coordinator. I think it just shows a lot. USC really did want to keep him. So I think they're happy in the building with the way things are going. And I think USC fans should be happy with him too.
Yeah, I want to know what the succession plan is, though, because he's going to continue to get people trying to get him, whether it's NFL, whether it's other assistant or other college programs. So learn from this, have a succession plan in place in case he does jump ship, and let's see if they can do really well this year with Lynn in the fold. Like, keeping him was huge. Now let's flex that muscle and, make sure everyone knows how huge it was. Like, have a great year on defense now.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's about it. Anything else? Any final thoughts?
No final thoughts.
Thanks for all the questions from Twitter and in the chat. I don't know. Hopefully the Facebook stuff was working. It looked like we didn't get a lot of Facebook questions in there today, but we appreciate you wherever you're consuming our content. Of course, over at uscfootball.com. We have links to all of it. Tons of stories, great insight, especially through the offseason. A lot of rewatches going on. There's evaluations. There's projections of depth charts. There's, where are they now with players that have transferred out, all that kind of stuff. A lot of good stuff over at uscfootball.com. If you're not a subscriber, you should be, especially if you're listening to past an hour of this podcast as we're going. We will have a composite 2-star recruits podcast, so you can email some questions to that too, podcast@uscfootball.com. Questions for our show. You want basketball, you can do that too. So yeah, we appreciate everyone out there listening, giving us the feedback, being on the site, being active. We love all of it. It's great. It's been a lot of fun. Yeah, ready for another year, Connor. Let's get this rolling.
Yeah, spring football is right around the corner.
All right. Well, thanks to you. Thanks to everyone out there. Thank you, Connor, for being alongside with me throughout this. Hope you guys all enjoyed the show, and we will talk to you next time.